Hi everybody, this is Joshua Kirk back with you guys once again on YouTube, and now it's time for episode 27 of Album of the Day. Excuse me. So anyway, this is episode 27 of Album of the Day, in which I'm gonna, keep, as I promised you, just in case any of you don't know this, I'm gonna do a review every Saturday morning because I've piled on top a bunch of CDs that I totally want to do a review of. So yeah, there's plenty of CDs that I have in my collection that I definitely want to do a review of because they're so good and I think they're worthy of a review. So anyway, today's artist is a band from Brooklyn, New York. I think they're from Brooklyn, New York. An indie rock band that started out playing college shows in 2006, and then, just sort of built their way up from there and recorded a pretty successful debut album in 2007, which was then released in 2008. Excuse me for my sneezes there. Excuse me. But anyway, the band is called Vampire Weekend, and I'm here to review their second album, their critically acclaimed second album released on January 12th, 2010. The album is called Contra, and this was released on XL Recordings, which is also the label for the White Stripes and artists like that. And I really like the White Stripes, so hopefully I should do a review of one of their albums. Like, maybe White Blood Cells or Elephant, because those are, without a doubt, their two best albums, and maybe two of the best rock and roll albums ever made. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the White Stripes. We're here to talk about Vampire Weekend, Contra. Let me tell you, I really dig this album cover. So yeah, I will admit this. I can stare at this album cover for hours. This album cover may be creepy to some, but, it's not creepy to me. It doesn't creep me out at all. I know this is probably a cover that someone might get creeped out by and might have nightmares about in their sleep. But me personally, it doesn't creep me out, and I never, ever have nightmares about that cover. So anyway, here's the album cover, spine, the other spine, and the back. And here are the songs on here: Horchata, White Sky, Holiday, California English, Taxi Cab, Run, Cousins, Giving Up the Gun, Diplomat's Son, and I Think You're a Contra, which is sort of a title track, but not really. It has the word Contra on it, but it's I Think You're a Contra. But anyway, and it comes with this little slip case here, kind of like what you would get with a DVD these days, or a Blu-ray or something, where you get slipcase. They have a slipcase in there, just like they do with the first Vampire Weekend album, which I constantly stated. I've never taped that on video, but, I've constantly stated that their self-titled debut album was my favorite of theirs, but I'm completely partial to this one, so that's why I'm reviewing it. But anyway, there's a cover, spine, other spine in the back. This is basically what it looks like without the slipcase. Anyway, I'm going to show you, there's a booklet in here. Alright, here it is. And it has lyrics for all the songs, which, I love to see the lyrics in there. This wouldn't be fair otherwise, but I'm okay with it if some albums that I buy don't have lyrics in them. Because most importantly, the music is really the key to it all, in my opinion. And of course, there's a cool little photo of the band. And of course, there's Chris Baio, who plays bass, Ezra Koenig, who sings and plays guitar sometimes. He plays a lot of guitar on the first album, but on this album, he plays a lot of guitar on the first album, but on the second album right here, Contra, he only plays the guitar on a few songs. In fact, Rostam Batmanglij, who you see there, he plays keyboards and sings, he played mostly keyboards on the first album, but on here he also plays lead guitar. And Christopher Thompson, right here, who is the drummer. And of course, Vampire Weekend songs have great drums in them. And then, following the lyrics, there's the liner notes. Vampire Weekend, additional musicians, the thank yous, everything. Everything you need to know in there. Showing you that, although there's not really much there. And then there's the CD right there. It's a pretty cool look on the CD. Alright, so let's talk about the tracks on here. So it opens with the song Horchata, which I think is a perfect way to open this album, with something catchy. And you can tell it's Vampire Weekend because it has kind of this Afro-pop feel, just like you would get off of most of the songs off of the self-titled debut album. But, you know, it's got a few different things. It's got a ton of roll instruments with the use of, like, marimba and kalimba and even a string section in there to put their own little twist on Afro-pop. Like, you know, it's got all the African backbeat kind of thing that you would get off of Vampire Weekend, but, you know, they put their own little twist on it by adding a bunch of rolled percussion instruments, as well as a string section, and, like, you know, just, you know, a fun song. Named after a drink called horchata, which is basically like, you know, coconut water or something like that. And I have had horchata, the drink, before. It's pretty good. And this song is excellent. Is an excellent way to open the album. White Sky is the next song on this record, and White Sky is one of the singles off of this album. It totally makes sense that this is a single off of the album, along with Horchata, because White Sky, it's got a catchy little programmed drum beat to it. It's not like a crazy bouncy beat that you hear in a lot of techno these days, but rather just, you know, some cool little loops of, like, you know, cool little loops of a crashing drum beat. As well as some, you know, cute little guitar riffs and quirky keyboard riffs on here too. And then there's a nice little chorus where Ezra Koenig just belts it out on the vocal. Like, I think this is one of his most successful vocal performances on here. You know, and in the background I'm hearing these little hey shouts in the background coming from Rostam Batmanglij and Chris Baio, because both of them sang backup on this song. So you can hear their little shouts of hey, hey in the background, which just, you know, makes it so catchy and so addictive, and eventually it's going to be stuck in your head all day once you listen to it once. Like, the great thing about songs is that the ones that really stick out to you, they have fun with, they stick in your head for a while. They stick in your head for a while, so you're like, you know, it can drive you a little crazy sometimes, but, you know, I always love it when I listen to something that eventually gets stuck in my head for hours and hours. Although my mind is mostly focused on, like, all kinds of music that, you know, it doesn't really get stuck in my head for hours, but, you know, it does get stuck in my head for the most part. The song Holiday is a catchy little stripped down kind of rock song, and, you know, this is a song that, when I listened to it, since Vampire Weekend wasn't really a band I was too familiar with or interested in until around the time their latest album, Modern Vampires of the City, which was actually released 3 days ago today, 3 days ago last year. But, you know, this song, you know, when I listen to it, I'm like, okay, I recognize this song a little bit, because I think I heard this song in a commercial. Now, I know, people get pretty angry when they hear a song in a commercial, but, me personally, I don't really get angry when I hear a song commercial. In fact, yeah, I've definitely heard the song before in a commercial. Now that I have the album and have listened to the full song instead of just a 30-second snippet of it, it's a catchy little, song, and then by the bridge, So yeah, some catchy little Afrobeat guitar riffs on here, as well as some simple little drumming on here. And then coming in on the bridge, there's some nice little piano riffs to complement the guitar and kind of mix together, a little bit. But so I think it's nice. So I think there's some nice piano added to the bridge too on this one. The song California English is a song that a lot of people were pretty polarized by, for a few reasons. One, it has auto-tune on it. Two, the lyrics are kind of crazy because they kind of refer to college and calling language corrupt and, private schools that have no Hapa Club. And here's some crazy little words on the bridge, fake Philly cheesesteak, but she used real toothpaste, for example. But this is actually, it's a pretty cool song. Some people find it annoying, but me, I don't find it annoying. In fact, it's amazing how Vampire Weekend could use autotune in a way that isn't annoying. It's not like autotune and girl pop that just covers up their voices in the most annoying way. Instead, they kind of think about, in this song, they kind of look at autotune as just another instrument for them to play. And, and since Ezra can sing, autotune actually works on his voice a little bit. So yeah, thankfully they kind of realized how, thankfully they realized how they do have fans. They are surrounded by people saying, it's not cool to use autotune with the song. So yeah, it's a, pretty interesting track. It can be, you might be a little turned off by it at first, but I think the more you listen to it, the more you kind of realize how creative and original Vampire Weekend is doing, even with the most annoying, music things like, even with the most annoying things in music like autotune. Autotune or something like that. So yeah, I think this is a song that's pretty interesting, actually, Although sometimes when they play it live, they can get a little overboard on the autotune, but still a good song, though. Track number 5 is called Taxi Cab, and this is a cool little song. This is a cool little song on the album. Has some nice little strings in the background, as well as a nice little, pulsating beat in the background. And then there's some catchy little, piano riffs on here too. And then there's lots of interesting instruments to be found on here. I think this is one of the standouts on the whole record. I mean, the instruments on this one just sound wonderful. In the middle of the song, there's a couple of cool little instruments. There's a harpsichord coming in, which I think sounds nice. Like, the harpsichord on it adds this nice little Beatles-esque Baroque pop feel to it, kind of like with George Martin producing a little bit. But with a modern twist, because it is Vampire Weekend, and it makes sense, because Vampire Weekend has only been around since 2006. But they're definitely a band that sound great. Like, they started out kind of indie in the beginning of their career, but now they're, like, everywhere. Especially with this new album, and with their latest one, Modern Vampires of the City. I mean, Rolling Stone gave Modern Vampires of the City 4.5 stars out of 5, so it shows that Vampire Weekend still to this day is getting all this hype. Is still, getting all this hype from critics and fans alike. And then coming in, there's a cool little guitar riff coming in, little atmospheric guitar riff coming in on Taxi Cab, and then in the middle of it, there's an upright bass that I hear. And in the middle of it, there's actually, the instrument that I'm hearing is an upright bass, which I think sounds pretty cool, because it's like, upright bass is kind of, because the upright bass on here, it's kind of played, pizzicato, where I think for the rest of the song it's probably played with a bow or something. And the double bass on the song, as well as on a couple other tracks, is played by Nat Baldwin, who, has been a musician friend of Vampire Weekend for a while. So yeah, Nat Baldwin does play double bass on a few tracks. The song Run is an interesting, fun song, too, starts out kind of guitar-driven in the beginning, but then as the song goes on, you realize how different it's getting, because it's getting some big synthesizers and techno horns and, just, a fun, bursting song, just bursting with color. Like, this album is definitely, on this album, I think Vampire Weekend, they paint, pretty creative music ideas in such passed-out colors. On this album. The song Cousins is like the lead single off of this album. And let me just say, this song is awesome. It's just, a fun, rocking song. It just makes you want to jump in your seat. It's got a lot of guitar noise going on and some loud drums, and it's just, it is just an awesome track. And it's, just an awesome track, and I can see why Cousins made sense for a single, because, it totally has that fun feel that a single would normally have, and it's, catchy and all. And lyrically, it's kind of a song about, the line that's always running between, cousins, pretty much, and our family, pretty much. Track number 8 is called Giving Up the Gun. I forgot to mention, in the song Cousins, there's by the end, there's weird little things going on. There's some chimes coming in by the end. So yeah, it kind of, is a weird little track, but it has some simply just fun guitar noise going on in it that totally makes the song succeed on the record. The song Giving Up the Gun is another interesting track. Has, cool little experimental things going on. The instruments on it sound great. The song is just, so, darn catchy. I will admit that. This song, as far as instrumentation goes, it's got, some hand drums going on in it. Drums in it. Some pretty amazing drum work from Christopher Thompson on this one. Some little bits of strings kind of hanging in the background. Some little strings kind of hanging in the background. And it's a longer song on the album, but it sort of shows it. The longer it gets, the more interesting elements that get into the song. And I think in the background I heard a glockenspiel or something. If it is a glockenspiel, cool. But if it's something else, I'm fine with that too. Although there isn't a glockenspiel in the liner notes at all on this album. The next track on here is the longest song by Vampire Weekend to date, Diplomat Son. This is a long 6-minute track with lots of things going on in it. There's a little sample of a Toots Hibbert song on here, which kind of, makes sense, because, Rostam Batmanglij is kind of a guy who's, the most creative guy in the band. He plays a lot of instruments, and plus he does some samples, too. Yeah, plus I really like how he kind of mixes in some samples on here, too. The keyboard on this one kind of reminds me of a keyboard riff that I would hear in a Depeche Mode song or stuff like that. Depeche Mode, I definitely think is an obvious influence in Vampire Weekend's music a little bit, although not as heavy in electronics or beats. Some nice little piano in the background, and there's some weird little drum tracks going on. Which kind of make this song, a little more interesting. And then the tempo changes in the bridge, and the great thing about the bridge is that Batmanglij, the keyboardist, actually sings the lead vocal on the bridge, while for the rest of the song, Ezra Koenig does the lead vocal. Let me tell you, Rostam voice is it's pretty sweet to hear. You know, his distinct voice in the bridge, lead, lead, and then, that same tempo kind of comes back with the nice little swirling strings in the background. But then, it comes back to the regular tempo of the whole song, like, aside from the bridge. And then coming in, there's like some hand drums and shakers, which I think add nice rhythm to the song, as well as the guitar riffs. The closing track on here is I Think You're a Contra, and unlike most of the other songs on the album, which are kind of upbeat, this song, it's like the most emotional sounding song on this whole record. It's kind of a ballad kind of thing, especially because the keyboard sounds, really sad, and plus, there's some nice little piano in here, which kind of reminds me of piano I would hear in, like, music from a movie theater or something like that. Here, some piano I would hear in, like, music in a movie theater or something like that is kind of what it reminds me of. Like, the piano in the song kind of reminds me of a trailer for one of those, like, drama movies or something like that. This is a song where, Ezra Koenig does sound pretty emotional on this song, vocally. That's for sure. So, and there's a slow little beat going on in the background, and then things get a little weird by the end. Like, there's some guitar. Once again, there's another outro with a nice mix of guitars and hand drums and shakers. Like, it kind of makes sense because, Vampire Weekend, they used a lot of hand drums on their first album. So yeah, the first album definitely has that Afrobeat sound they would have. So production-wise, I think this album is really done. It's a little more modernized than the last one before this, the self-titled debut. But, it's not modern sounding in a bad way. It's just, it sounds, a little more kind of like, the modern music that you would hear today. So yeah, it's kind of, Vampire Weekend's kind of more like a mix of kind of like music you would have heard back then by like the Beatles or something, but then with a little more kind of, of like today's music kind of style added to it at the same time too. As far as originality goes, I would give this thing, on this thing, I would give it a 9 maybe out of 10. Lyrically, some people have criticized Vampire Weekend a little bit for being too preppy and being rip-offs and all that, but I personally don't really think that. Although they do have references to college and Cape Cod in their lyrics, especially on their first album, which makes sense because around the time when they recorded it, it was back when they were still playing some small college shows. Small college shows back then. So I would give Contra 10 out of 10. Great album. All the songs just sound really, really memorable. Like, this is kind of an album that gets stuck in your head for a while. I haven't listened to this album in a while, but, I remember, when I was listening to this, when I started listening to this, I just can remember how memorable it was to me and how much I loved it to death. Like, this thing's been talked about to death. So yeah, that's my review of Vampire Weekend's Contra. If you really like this album, if you're obsessed with it like me, I would love to hear your comments on it in the description. Once again, get all those likes, put on all those nice comments because, all you guys are just amazing for just, watching my reviews, liking them, putting in some nice comments in the comment section, and plus, just having a ton of appreciation and a ton of positive feedback for my reviews, because that's totally what I need for my reviews. So that's my review of Vampire Weekend's Contra. I'll see you in my next review, which will be episode 8.